This had better be good, Crib.
Scragrot congratulated himself on restraining a sigh as he spoke. In the Loonkin's experience, his underlings' petitions rarely hit the threshold of decent, let alone good. Still, part of bosshood was showing was not feeding gits to the squigs just because they annoyed you. The Loon King reclined in his litter, the upturned cap of a greater stinkhorn, borne by armoured troggoths, and inhaled. There was a pleasant chewiness to the fungal asylum's air. Colours he'd stopped trying to name pulsed from the scryer shrooms that stood in clusters, vestigal faces gurning on their stalks. The shroom mutants screeching rose into the asylum's heights, where conventional geometry had become a shouting match between impossible cosmic forces.
Silver's Gork is green, you looniness. You're gonna love it.
The snivelly voice took a cudgel to Scragrot's threateningly good humour. He shifted atop his throne to sneer at the figure below. Decaying refuse squelched as Crib, the asylum keeper, performed a bandy-legged jig. The grot kept nodding like a squig, with juicy prey in its gob. Scragrot glanced at the others upon his litter. These were his high Gubbapalooza, or at least those he'd been able to round up. The mighty Mesmerismo was busy liquefying the brain of some unfortunate snotling. Curdlegore, his arch-spiker, was deep in conversation with the creepy crawlies that slunk amongst his bottled poisons. The mound of filth-encrusted robes and rusted ambelics off to the right would be Slumblegut. The elderly Brewgrit caught Scragrot's eyes and shrugged.
Crib!
The Loon King's utterance saw the grot's squelching dance cease.
Get to the point, or I'll stuff puffguts down you till you burst. Right, you dankness. Sure.
The asylum keeper gave a spittle-spraying whistle. From behind a colossal scry shroom that had once been a gargant matriarch came the sound of straining and shuffling. A troop of 5 grots staggered out, clutching a struggling shape. Robes had been torn from the Skaven's white-furred body, but the horn spiralling from its brow made plain its nature as a shaman. Acidic webbing bound its arms and tail against its body, sizzling slightly. The Ratman squirmed, and likely would have snarled if not for the wad of deathcap rammed between its jaws.
A gift from Boss Shivered at the Mine Warrens, you moony magnificence,
Crib beamed, as his underlings snickered and jabbed the Ratman.
Thought you might want to see it right away.
That is Bellfinger,
Slumblegut gurgled, leaning in.
Hey, boss, especially when the Mine Warren scrap ain't going so good.
The remark drew a warning look from the Loon King, but no more. The war against the Ratman to the north had started well enough before Skaven reinforcements had flooded the caves and began jamming massive spars of globy rock into the ground, fighting like fanatics to defend them. Aside from mutterings of bad vibes, no grot had yet deduced what the Ratmen were playing at.
Ratty wants to speak,
Mesmerismo warbled. Scragrot ran a warty thumb over his metal chin spike.
Let's hear it then.
The Ratman's first instinct following his gag's removal was to spit an incantation. The boss fungus that sprouted from Scragrot's skull tingled as the magic fell flat. The Loon King laughed, a jagged shiv of a noise.
I wouldn't, Ratty.
Bullying by generations of Oryx had given Grot an innate appreciation for the power of a proper loom. It was a technique Scragrot employed with relish, as he made sure his shadow, stretched in the mildewed twilight, fell long across his prisoner.
Your sparky spells ain't no good here. Look around.
Scragrot gave his most regal sweep of an arm, grinning as clusters of scryer shrooms shuddered.
These was all shamans once, then they had a run-in with the moon on a stick. They tell me more interesting stuff now.
The Loon King paused, letting the wiggling of his captive seers escalate. A pungent odour was rising. He'd fought Skaven enough to recognize the musk of fear. Snorting, Scragrot waved a finger.
But you see, we don't get many ratties round here, and I reckon you're a brainy sort. You know about our scrap with your mates, so here's me with a problem, and you in a position to be offering advice.
The Ratman narrowed an evil gaze at Scragrot.
The sleeping one will nourish your bones. You try and be reasonable,
Scragrot tutted, reaching for his stave. Atop a staff of gnarled snaggle willow, the moon on a stick glowered like a jaundiced gargoyle. The Skaven twitched, baring his fangs.
Inflict your torments, green thing. Gracie Russet fears nothing. 2 denials,
Scragrot mused.
committed for a ratty.
A stamp of his pointed shoe signalled the Troggoths to lower his throne.
Wait. Aha!
Razzik's eyes darted to and fro before he puffed out his chest.
Incautious words. Yes. Did not sense your lordliness, green thing. And now I am abandoned by worthless minions. New alliances do appeal.
He attempted a bow, licking dry lips.
There is a plot. We sniff for where magic pools. There, we drive in warpstone like poison daggers until...
A hacking spasm racked him. Scragrot wondered if he was choking on a hairball. Razzik thrashed and frothed, eyes rolling back. Then he exploded. Scragrot had already started running. The blast still hurled him from the litter, screeching and cartwheeling. He bounced off the spongy flesh of a scry shroom before landing amidst the filthy underbrush with a splash. Ears ringing, the Loon King looked up. Orb flame stung his eyes where it had raged through the air. A Troggoth litter-bearer had been reduced to ashes. Another was half aflame, screaming in something uncomfortably close to terror. The other 2 had tossed the litter aside, edging away from the hungry flames. At first, Scragrot didn't recognize a blackened husk nearby as Curdle Slob, legs arthritically contorted in death like one of his beloved spiders. Slumblegut had at least avoided burning. He hadn't avoided landing on his neck. The scry shroom's yowling was deafening. Those closest to the blast screamed and blubbered as they were lashed by tails of emerald flame. They ignited easily, as did drifting spore clouds that became spreading sheets of fire. The fungal asylum was burning. Scragrot had never really hated a foe before. Gordrak had been better to manipulate, Kregnos even more so. The Sky Stunties who raided Scrapper Spill, well, that was business as usual. This was different. Trembling, the Loon King staggered to his feet, snatching up the moon on a stick and his chittering skull wand.
Not in my house, you zoggin' gits!
Scragrot vomited his contempt as a fog of spore mist. The cloud expanded, drawing other motes of fungal arcana to form a gurning moon visage. The apparition's jaws widened with the crack of insect limbs. It swallowed the warp flame. There was a low, gulping rumble. The moon eyes bulged. With a muffled bang, the spell construct burst. A last spiteful wave of heat swept the asylum before fizzing out. The shadow of a figure lingered where the grey seer had once stood. It was horned and verminious, a mirror of Razzik, but stretched to appalling lengths and emanating foulness. It raised its arms in mocking benediction. Sneering, Scragrot returned a gesture of his own. The shape dissipated, leaving Scragrot retching on smoke. Nothing was left of Crib but a pair of fire-blackened boots. The burning Troggoth now lay still, and while Mesmerismo had survived, even the Boggle-Eye's cackles were less spirited than usual. Surrounding them was a forest of charred scry shrooms. Scragrot's spellcraft had saved the greater swathe of the asylum, but nothing could be done for these. Stork faces locked in ashen rictuses. No more prophecies would dribble from their lips. Wood cracked. The Loon King's grasp had splintered the moon on a stick shaft. He shook splinters from his bloodied hand and chuckled in a low, ugly drawl.
All right, ratties. Now it's personal.